Good morning, fellow South Africans. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you through digital media, and my humble apologies for not being present there physically. Unfortunately, I have to be in Parliament today, and that means that I have to be in Cape Town. And technology is not so advanced as to allow us to take the risks of Skyping with you, which was the other option that I had. Nonetheless, this session on nation building and nation builders is an important one, and I want to congratulate the Gordhan Group for arranging events like this in different parts of the country so that we can share ideas and perhaps even the emotions that are involved in the process of nation building. Some of the themes that you're looking at in the course of the day, such as innovation, managing millennials, and how do we harness the energy of millennials, but more importantly in our context, how do we spread economic and other opportunities to all 55 million South Africans, are important issues both now and I imagine for the short term to medium term as well. South Africa today is in the second day of the Zondo Commission on State Capture, and is emerging from a 5 to 7 year period during which all of us, unfortunately, took a bit too long to connect the dots and to begin to understand the kind of malfeasance that was going on both within the state, but indeed within the private sector as well, because the private sector was a key player in its different manifestations in this process, whether it was private sector as in business, as in auditors, consulting firms, and legal firms, and amongst others, all had some kind of role or the other. Interestingly, yesterday, the 20th of August, 35 years ago, was the day on which the United Democratic Front was launched. And both the Zondo Commission and the UDF share an interesting timeline, although 35 years apart. And both of them was about creating hope, mobilizing the national energy, creating greater clarity about some of the challenges that we face, and leaving behind, if you like, the demons of our past. In addition, both globally and in our own country, we have both a fascinating but also a worrying set of factors that you need to take into account as you get into the rest of the program. On a global basis and local basis, challenges around inclusive growth have been with us for the last couple of years, and there's increasing debate about how to overcome inequalities in both income and in wealth, both in the developed part of the world, but indeed in the developing part of the world like our own as well. Similarly, a serious challenge lies both now and into the future on the question of jobs for young people, but also the retraining of older people in order to cope with what is called the fourth industrial revolution and the kind of digital technology that seems to be sweeping through the production and other processes globally and indeed in South Africa as well. So offering hope for youth, offering hope in particular for the hundreds of thousands of graduates who are walking our streets today, who are able to say, I have this piece of paper, but I can't get a job, is a challenge that we should share together, and a challenge I hope we can overcome together. Having equal development in the globe between the most developed parts and the developing part is also a challenge captured in the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which is trying to create, if you like, a common floor of basic rights that human beings throughout the globe will have and benefit from, and thereby raise both the standard of living and their quality of living at the end of the day as well. We are also faced with a period that we actually can't measure or define of geopolitical turmoil. And clearly the contestation between major economic and political powers across the globe are today beginning to result in both economic turbulence, political uncertainty, and a measure of disruption in respect of trade, in respect of trade agreements, in respect of the multilateral world and a rules-based world that many of us have got used to over the past 10 to 15 years. And one does not know where this disruption is likely to end and what the final configuration of countries and economies and societies would look like, say, 2 or 3 years from this point onwards. But equally worrying are developments that have taken all of us and many parts of the world by surprise in one sense, but I'm sure have been growing subterraneanly over a period of time. So today, many countries in the developed, but I think in the developing world as well, are confronted with issues of immigration, and where suddenly even the most progressive countries in the world have populations that are uncomfortable with what are visitors to their country from perhaps sometimes across the border, when for many decades in the past that was not actually an issue. So insecurity of tenure, insecurity in respect of jobs, insecurity in terms of identity, are all issues that are plaguing other parts of the world, and in many different ways plaguing our own country as well, although plaguing is perhaps too harsh a word. A second factor that is sweeping the globe is nationalism. And with nationalism comes trade protectionism, which is again the antithesis of the free trade ethos that many of us have grew up with and believe in. And whilst at the same time, under the banner of free trade, there was a measure of protectionism that every single country of any substance was actually practicing, we have a situation where this growth in protectionism and nationalism, if not measured, and if it is not measured and if it is not directed in a constructive kind of way, could have dire consequences for relationships between nations in the future. But these factors are also often accompanied, both in our own country and elsewhere, by an element of racial chauvinism, and as some might suggest, even elements of fascism as well. So these are tendencies which display a chauvinistic approach, a disregard for the kind of nation-building process that we are only at the beginnings of in our brief 25-year history in South Africa, and which we've been managing very carefully over time as leaders from different communities and interest groups, and which could become seriously disrupted if we don't collectively give attention as nation builders and as innovators to this particular process. Perhaps the last of the concerns or trends that are developing is the streak of authoritarianism, which is contesting the forms of democracy that have been developed over many decades in the 20th century. And this tendency towards authoritarianism is something that we need to look at carefully. And those of us who believe in constitutional democracies, in the rule of law, and in the kind of Bill of Rights that we have in our own constitution, would be very concerned about these developments, particularly in key developed and developing countries across different continents of the world. So, what does all this mean for us as South Africans? And where do we focus and locate our energies as South Africans? Firstly, South Africa does matter. It's a question that many are raising in different kinds of contexts, but we remain one of the biggest and the most sophisticated economy on the African continent. It's our own fault that in many respects we're beginning to have, if you like, the crown slipping from our heads in relation to key performance areas in our economy, which is affecting our standing at the top of the African continent. But these are not irretrievable lapses that we are actually having, and given a collective will, if we can develop it, areas of losses that we could actually recapture. So some of the focus areas I want to suggest to you, and imperatives that we face as South Africans, is firstly, how do we build our economic and social infrastructure so all the people of South Africa are removed from both absolute poverty and indeed poverty itself, and are active citizens both in the economy and in South African society, and are capable of realizing their full potential as human beings. Clearly, to get this economy going, and 1.3 and 1.5% growth levels are just not acceptable, I'm sure, both to yourselves, but to ourselves in government and to society more generally as well. So building confidence across this country is a crucial task, notwithstanding the many challenges that we actually face. Because it is the optimists and those who have a sense of vision about what South Africa can achieve potentially who should dictate the pace of and the direction of the kind of changes that we want to see and build upon in the years to come. So firstly, how do we build confidence? What are the issues we need to resolve? And understanding some of the confidence-related factors also requires an understanding of our history. The fact that we were a colonial outpost is often forgotten. The fact that we were subjected to British colonialism in one form or another over many decades is often forgotten today. The fact that this form of governance and control in South Africa over a long period of time, including the apartheid era, created a particular set of structural phenomena in our country, which today, in order to build our democracy and build a shared approach to our democracy, we have to undo in one form or another, or mutate into a more democratic form that would actually suit our purposes in the 21st century, are challenges that are not at the forefront of our minds. So this is an appeal to say, often we panic about the immediate issues that we are confronted with if we don't actually understand the context from which each of us are approaching this issue. And I can certainly say to you from a government point of view, notwithstanding the manner in which some of these elements might be reported from time to time, that we are fundamentally committed to and invested in creating a South Africa where we do share prosperity, where we have an equal stake in this particular country, where we continue the nation-building process, and ensure that all of us are able to extend solidarity and share the resources that we have with the least privileged in this country, so that all of us can say we have a shared commitment and stake both today and into the future. So that's the confidence factor. Second, how do we build a set of environments in which the greater investment takes place in our economy and society, both from internal business and external business as well, and other multilateral banks and so on. This is the theme of the conference that the President Ramaphosa, is convening on the 26th and 27th of October this year, which is to attract both local and foreign investors and say, let's all take a positive and optimistic approach to this economy, understand the different components at a micro level of our economy and the kind of opportunities they offer, both on the one hand to invest and profit, and on the other hand to build the economy of this country, create jobs for our young people, offer greater training possibilities to our young people as well, and in the next 2 to 3 years lay the foundation for a more prosperous economy than we might currently have. So we need to share, thirdly, the commitment to moving away from the 1 to 2% growth to a scenario where we're talking about a 3.5% to 5% growth as the National Development Plan requires. But growth in a way in which all sectors of society can palpably benefit from this growth. It is this lack of palpable benefit that is impacting on populations throughout the world and created both a perception and an experience which says that growth benefits elites only. And those elites, political elites and economic elites and social elites, are disconnected from the vast majority of citizens in each of those countries. And in this context, the microeconomy is far more important than we might have thought. In other words, a better understanding of agriculture and what skills we have in this country and what potential we have to build African agricultural capabilities in traditionally excluded communities can actually create phenomenal synergies amongst us, some of which is happening on a micro scale, but it needs to happen on a far greater scale than we actually have it today. Similarly, what are the opportunities in infrastructure, in the oceans economy, in tourism, and in many similar sectors as well, issues that you should engage with in order that we can create the right kind of economic dynamism that we actually require. But we should also remember that there is a significant part of our population residing in peri-urban areas and rural areas who are deprived even today, 25 years into our democracy, and because of limitations in administration, capability, and financial resources, they're deprived of basic services, they're deprived of basic infrastructure like roads in villages to connect to main arteries in various parts of the country. They're deprived of information. And so we have a huge information asymmetry and a resource asymmetry in our country, which means that unless we can build bridges amongst those who know and those who don't know, those who have opportunities and those who can't see them at this point in time, we are doomed to carry on in our silos and build antagonism between us and amongst us as well. And I'm sure, given the kind of audience that you have, and the entrepreneurial experience and the flair for creativity and innovation that you have amongst yourselves, both in this audience and elsewhere, that one of the tasks that we should assume is not only how do we get tech startups for ourselves, which itself is a difficult task, I admit, but how do we also train people from the black community and show them what it means to get startups going and share entrepreneurial opportunities with them as well. There's no doubt that some of the advanced topics that you will be discussing, like blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and I must be very frank with you, I don't command all the information and understanding about these issues at the moment, but there's clearly the idea of a traditional, for example, electricity grid versus a smart grid. There are traditional ideas in terms of how non-technologically some of the key elements of society and our economy are run, and of course the digital and technology side will radically change the manner in which these are both managed and operated in our society, but equally in other societies as well. But I imagine the key challenge that I haven't seen too much of, and I don't claim to know everything, and would be very useful to debate and understand from yourselves, is how do we ensure that these new technologies are steered in a direction where they contribute towards lessening inequality, increasing opportunity, empowering ordinary people, exciting young people so that they have both the enthusiasm to work for themselves and a better future for themselves, but also at the same time we have a new morality in this country which is based on integrity, based on good ethics, based on solidarity amongst the different groups that we have in our country, and on a spirit of sharing, which is going to be still very crucial for us for the next 10 to 20 years as well. In conclusion, let me congratulate the Mergen Group, and the theme of Nation Builder is very appropriate to our current environment and appropriate for the next few years as well, because nation building is certainly the task that we face in every sense of the word, economic, social, technological, and in terms of creating the kind of understanding and empathy that we actually require in our society. It also helps us to create a platform where we have the right moral standards, the right integrity and ethics, and the right kind of approach to ensuring that we rid ourselves in our society of the kind of gross corruption that we're actually seeing during the state capture era, which will all be unfolding as the Zondo Commission begins to do its work. And join us in speaking up against the wrong things, and stand up for what is right, stand up for what the future actually holds for all of us, and above all, become change agents, join a band of visionary leaders in every section of our society, is required today, I think, to produce a set of leaders who have a sense of vision on the one hand, but also a sense of the context in which we are operating, and are willing to both attend to their own businesses on the one hand, but also work for the benefit of future generations as well. And in that sense, let me leave you on the note that all of us should become more active nation builders as we go into the future. And once again, thank you very much for this opportunity to share these ideas with you. And once again, my apology for not being present at your event. Thank you.